live at 8:20. 8:20. Test, test. Okay. Good evening and welcome once again to Motor Gospel Ministries TV. It's a beautiful night here in Sylmar. It's been a very eventful week. Some really high highs and some really low lows, at the risk of stating the obvious. A bunch of people lost their lives this week in a very public way. People lose their lives every week. There are something like a minimum of 700,000 people killed through abortion, babies killed in the womb per year. So that means pretty much daily babies are dying. But it doesn't seem to get the press that we got this week around some people of color getting shot by cops, and pretty much nobody knows what happened. Nobody was there. I mean, the people at the situation were there. I know for sure I don't know what happened, and a lot of people are rushing to judgment. Now, 5 officers died in Dallas last night, and all they were doing was trying to protect protesters who were saying F the police. They were working sacrificially to protect the right of people to spit in their faces and call them names and stuff like that, and they ended up dying doing that. It's been a very challenging week. So I want to talk about a topic. It's not a new topic, but I think it's more important than anything else I have to say tonight in light of the events of the past few days. Every time, but before we get to the Bible, we will get into some scriptures in a minute here. But just by way of brief introduction, you know, as a 3-time champion with the National Auto Sport Association and a driving instructor at the track, I can tell you pretty much every season we get a new crop of people that think they know how to drive. They come out with fast cars, and they think highly of themselves. They look real confident before they've actually gotten behind the wheel on the track, and they want to know. Their only question is, how do I pass everybody? Because they assume they're going to be the fast guy and they're going to pass everybody. And often the one who's asking that kind of question ends up being the slowest person on the track. The overly confident clearly doesn't have a clue. It doesn't always happen that way, but it generally happens that way. People tend to think that if you take a man and set him in a chair and spread his legs apart gently and put a cello between his knees and put a gun to his head and tell him, okay, 64th notes at 150 beats per minute, and if you hit one wrong note, we're going to blow your brains out, he will drop the cello and the bow and go screaming from the room. If you take a man and you put a small child on an operating table and you put a scalpel in his hand and you say, okay, do brain surgery on a small child, and if you're off by a 32nd of an inch, you will make this child into a quadriplegic the rest of his days. The man will drop the scalpel and go running from the room. But you put a steering wheel in a man's hands, and for some reason he thinks he knows how to drive. We see it sometimes with women, but much more frequently with men. I've instructed both women and men at the racetrack, and invariably the women start out more cautiously than the men do, but by the end of the day they're better drivers than men are, because they don't think they already know how to drive. They come out for instruction and they listen attentively and they appropriate the instruction, so that by the end of the day they're smoking fast drivers generally, compared to the men who came out and it took half the day just to convince them that they don't really know how to drive. They may look real sharp holding the steering wheel in their hands, but anybody can look good holding the bow on the cello. That doesn't actually mean they can play 150 beats per minute, 64th notes with a gun to their head. Right? So I go around doing this demonstration where I hold a dollar bill and I have somebody put their fingers on the sides of the dollar bill, and their assignment is to catch the dollar bill before it hits the ground. They're not allowed to close their fingers until I open my fingers. And I've been doing that demonstration, and in 35 years, only one person has ever caught that bill. And I'm convinced that person got lucky and they just happened to close their fingers just at the right time.
Wow.
I give everybody 3 strikes. It's not just a one-time thing. Nobody can catch that bill. The time that elapses between when I let go of the bill and when they close their fingers is human reaction time. It's about a blink of an eye. It's about 250 milliseconds. And everybody, prior to trying that test, thinks they could catch that bill. Everybody coming out to the racetrack, prior to actually getting on track, thinks because they know how to hold the steering wheel and they look kind of like Vin Diesel while they're doing it, they think they know how to drive, and they're all wrong. Nobody catches the bill. Nobody knows how to drive. for the most part, 99% of people, you know. Um, but it's part of the human condition that we think we know what we do. We think we would catch that bill. We think we'd make the right life and death decision in 250 milliseconds as we're going 150 miles an hour, running over somebody else going 125 into a blind turn, being overtaken by somebody going 200 miles an hour plus with a red and yellow striped flag waving, and we have the blink of an eye to make the right decision, zig or zag, or what is I'm supposed to do with life and death riding on it. It's very easy for people to second guess the police and to criticize them and even to snipe at them vengefully because they think they would have done something different if they were in a life and death situation. They think, oh, I would have just shot the person's kneecap in the blink of an eye. You know, I wouldn't have hit them in the abdomen or something like that. Very, very easy for us to think we know what we do in the blink of an eye without ever having been anywhere near that kind of situation. A cop who is a mom with children at home, wanting to go home to her children, not in a casket, has to make a decision in the blink of an eye, a life and death decision. That's an awful lot to ask somebody. So the most timely, important thing we can discuss tonight is how badly the cops need our help. The cops have authority, they have bullets and guns and handcuffs and badges and all that stuff, but they clearly need our help. There's a wave of anti-cop prejudice, and it is prejudice. It's not fact-based. It's not objective. It's not thinking clearly about the situations. As a rocket scientist, I can tell you there are only two elements in the universe. You probably grew up thinking there's this periodic table, and there's hydrogen. What's the latest one? Helium? Helium, hydrogen? I can't remember. It's been a long time. I wasn't a chemist. I was a physicist. But there's a periodic table with hydrogen and helium and nickel and iron and barium and thorium and praseodymium. I think there's a praseodymium and certainly neodymium. There's a lot of elements, right? No. As a scientist, I'm here to tell you the entire universe is made up of only two elements. Only two elements make up the entire universe. Do you know what those two elements are?
What?
Facts and opinions.
Oh.
The entire universe is either a fact or an opinion. Under facts, there are lots of little shades of gray, like photographs, miles per gallon, you know, calories, whatever, evidence, things that can be sensed with a, you know, a neutrino detector or something. That's all facts. Opinions, there are various things, hypotheses, speculations, suspicions, rumors, you know, values, different things. None of those are really facts. But lies are not facts. They're not exactly opinions either, but they're certainly not facts because they're not true. It's not wrong to have an opinion, but any opinion that we have, if we're going to be big boys and big girls about our opinions, we need to be able to stand up to, withstand our opinions being compared objectively with facts. If I hear, put the bag in the microwave and I hear popping and I smell butter and I see the bag swelling and it has the word popcorn on the bag, it would be reasonable to be of the opinion that there's popcorn in that bag. That's a reasonable opinion to have, given that evidence.
Right.
Yeah. So, not wrong to have an opinion, but our opinion should be able to withstand objective contemplation of facts. And there are a lot of opinions being perpetrated on society from Facebook, from the evening news, from all over the place, saying that cops are trigger happy, cops are the mafia, cops are corrupt, cops are all racist. I don't know how that works because I have cops that are people of color, black, brown, yellow, cops that are many different from many different backgrounds. If they're all racist, I'm not sure who they're all racist against. I guess the black cops only shoot white people or something, and the white cops only shoot black people. If they're supposedly all racist, I don't know how that's supposed to work. But there's a prevalent notion that's getting people stirred up. Hitler got people stirred up in Nazi Germany. Otherwise, right-thinking people got stirred up and felt fine about throwing Jews in the oven, in the gas chambers, and burning them and raping and doing all kinds of horrible stuff, seizing their assets, stealing from them. It's one thing for crazy people to do that, but there were people in Nazi Germany that were not so crazy. They were just trying to feed their families. They were afraid of Hitler, and they had been fed so much evil about the Jews, they were just like, I mean, if I convinced you that the person across the street is a child molester, you might go and start beating on that person without getting the facts, without finding out if it's even true, or if I was just talking some inaccurate smack about that person. That's kind of how lynch mobs work. somebody says, oh, this person kills baby kittens or something like that, and the lynch mob gets so mad about it, they don't even bother to find out. There is no innocent till proven guilty when you're talking to a lynch mob. There's a mindset, and there's a lot coming at the cops saying they're racist, they're corrupt, they're mafiosos, they're trigger happy, they're this, that, the other. The fact side of things is that for every one possibly questionable killing by a cop, there are greater than 1,000 deaths attributable to gangs, drugs, and drunk driving. If we're going to get in a fervor and we're going to protest and we're going to start shooting people and stuff like that because of unjust killings, it seems like people would be getting awfully upset about the gangs, the drugs, and the drunk driving, because that kills greater than 1,000 people for every one questionable shoot by cops. But I don't see a bunch of protesters lining up and throwing rocks at Crips or Bloods or the MA or any. I don't see them protesting the gang members, even though they're killing a lot more than the cops.
They're as patient as the PD.
Thank you. Right? Would it be funny to see the protesters? How do you say it? Moruska? What's the 13? The Salvadoran.
MS-13.
Thank you. Would it be funny to see some protesters protesting against MS-13 if they're really mad, if they really want to get in a fervor about unjust killings? What's the protesters trying to stop traffic for MS-13 or the cartel or something like that? I don't think they wouldn't slow down for them. What was that? Right? But the cops patiently take it all, while the protesters are protesting that the cops are this, that, or the other, and it's totally inaccurate. And the protesters aren't looking at the fact that greater than 1,000 people are killed. Let me see if that puts the wrong light on this. No, that's fine. Is this a little too loud? Stand by. Test. Okay. Okay. The cops are just standing there taking it all, including getting shot by people who somehow feel justified because they've been convinced by the evening news that the cops are racist and trigger happy and all that. So, in short, the cops need our help. There are a lot of people confused about the cops that are not giving them a fair hearing in the court of public opinion at all. And they're not just talking smack, they're shooting them, they're doing all kinds of horrible stuff. To my friends, I have cops that I'm very close to that aren't just doing lip service, they're not just being political. I know these people, I know them quite well. I'm absolutely convinced they're not evil, they're not bent on destruction, they're selfless servants. It really, really makes me mad. There are a lot of times when I'm not real sure whether my anger is righteous or not. There is such a thing as righteous anger in this book. There is such a thing as unrighteous anger in this book. When I contemplate cops that are friends of mine, that are females, that are 5 feet tall, getting beat or shot or whatever, when I know they're selfless servants and I know them well enough to know they're not trigger happy, they're not racist, I get pretty mad about that, and I'm not ashamed of being mad about that. So they need our help. Sometimes I think we forget how much people need our help, because I'm a little guy. I don't have a gun, a badge. I would probably scream like a woman and run away in a physical confrontation. I'm bold and fearless and loud and out there. If it has a steering wheel, if it has a keyboard, if it has a microphone, I rock it boldly and fearlessly. But a physical confrontation, I'd probably scream like a woman and run away. Sorry, I've looked in the mirror. I know it's the truth, right? So I'm sitting here thinking, what could I possibly do to help the cops, right? I'm not all that with the physical confrontation thing. Let's look at some examples here, and then we can look a little bit at our own lives, at least briefly. If you brought your Bibles, turn to Genesis 41. We're going to start with Genesis 41. Genesis chapter 41.
The beginning?
Oh, let's see.
Oh, that's Genesis 1.
Yeah, that was funny.
Oh, okay.
Share?
Yeah.
So, Genesis chapter 41. Now it happened at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh had a dream. Pharaoh was the most powerful man in the land. Pharaoh was considered pretty much to be a god by the people. He could do anything he wanted to. He could have you killed just because you weren't paying enough attention or you didn't bow the right way when you walked by or something. He could pretty much do anything. Pharaoh had a dream, and behold, he was standing by the Nile, and lo, from the Nile there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed in the marsh grass. Do you need to borrow some reading glasses?
That's okay.
Okay.
That's like here.
Okay.
We can share.
Okay.
My Bible.
Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile, ugly and gaunt. And they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. The ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Then Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of grain came up on a single stalk, plump and good. Then behold, 7 ears, thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. Then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Now in the morning his spirit was troubled, so he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt and all its wise men, and Pharaoh told them his dreams, but there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Then the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, I would make mention today of my own offenses. Pharaoh was furious with his servants, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, both me and the chief baker. We had a dream on the same night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now a Hebrew youth, and a Hebrew was a slave in this context. There was no affirmative action that gave reparations to Hebrew slaves or anything. A Hebrew slave was a real slave, a slave that was not respected by Pharaoh, was not respected by the Egyptians. His life was worth nothing, basically. Hebrew youth was with us there, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard, and we related them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream. And just as he interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in my office, but he hanged him. Not the Hebrew slave, he hanged one of the 2 people that had a dream according to the interpretation that Joseph, the Hebrew slave, had given. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So Pharaoh spoke to Joseph. In my dream, behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile, and behold, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile, and they grazed in the marsh grass. Lo, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such as I had never seen for ugliness in all the land of Egypt. And the lean and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. Yet when they had devoured them, it could not be detected that they had devoured them, for they were just as ugly as before. Then I awoke. I saw also in my dream, and behold, 7 ears, full and good, came up on a single stalk, and lo, 7 ears, withered, thin, and scorched by the east wind, sprouted up after them. And the thin ears swallowed the 7 good ears. Then I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. Now Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told to Pharaoh what he is about to do. God gave a revelation to an ungodly man, to an ungodly leader who wasn't saved. God has told to Pharaoh what he is about to do, but he did it by one of his people, by Joseph. The 7 good cows are 7 years. The 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. The 7 lean and ugly cows came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh what he is about to do. And we'll skip through a little bit. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming, then famine, jumping to 33. Now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. Let them gather all the food, store it up, etc., etc. Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is a divine spirit?" Say divine spirit.
Divine spirit.
Divine spirit,
Divine
yeah.
spirit.
Yep. Supernatural. Joseph had a supernatural power that nobody in Egypt had. Not Pharaoh, not any of his so-called wise men, not his magicians, not his soldiers. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has informed you of all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. You shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I have set you over all the land of Egypt." Pharaoh had all the power in the land of Egypt, but he didn't have the power that Joseph had available to him. Pharaoh needed help from Joseph. He needed help from a man of God. He needed the power of God, and that was only available to him through a Hebrew slave, somebody who was a zero, somebody who counted for nothing. It would be a little bit like asking a homeless person under the freeway to go to the White House and save the United States, or asking an illegal immigrant or something like that. I'm neither for nor against immigration, legal or otherwise. That's 1,000 shades of gray that I'm not smart enough to get into. But just trying to make the point that you can't imagine how unimportant Joseph was, and yet here he was helping the most powerful man in the land. Didn't have enough power to do it on his own. He needed help from one of God's people, God's power. 1 Samuel 17.
Gabby gave this one because it's easier to read.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
It's the same transliteration that Aaron used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to go to Bible study
Uh-huh.
quite a while, not too long ago. Anyway, I read the Bible from cover to cover, but
Good.
it took me 2 years.
Okay.
Right?
That's not bad.
And I still am confused.
Okay.
So I have to, go back and check up on different, like Pharaoh, how did he die? I don't remember.
Okay.
How did he die?
Oh, this one, there were many favors. This one, I don't remember either.
Okay.
But we can take a look at it at dinner if you want.
Well,
yeah. I don't have the entire Bible
That's
committed
okay.
to memory.
That's all right.
Yeah. Well, no, it's good. I mean, question and answer is good. Interaction is good and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll check it out. Or do you remember? Maybe you've checked it out more recently than I.
No, I don't remember how he died.
Okay.
But he did so many evil things. He was very bad.
Yeah.
Very evil.
Yeah. And there were actually many pharaohs, sort of like Caesars or something like that. But this particular one, I don't remember. We'll check it out.
Okay.
We'll take a look after, if you remind me. So, 1 Samuel 17. The Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah. They camped between Socoh and Azekah. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these authentically or not. In Ephes Damim, Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and camped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array to encounter the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on one side, while Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, with the valley between them. Then a champion came out from the armies of the Philistines, named Goliath, from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was clothed with scale armor, which weighed 5,000 shekel of bronze. Shekels has an S on it, but when we were in Israel, they pronounce it shekel without the S, even if it's plural. 10 shekel, 1 shekel, yeah. I don't know if that's slang, if that's an Israeli accent, or if that's just the S is silent, but that's the way they pronounced it. 5,000 shekel of bronze. He also had bronze greaves on his legs and a bronze javelin slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighed 600 shekel of iron. His shield carrier also walked before him. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel and said to them, "Why do you come out to draw up in battle array? Am I not the Philistine, and you servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us." Again the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. King Saul was the most powerful man in all of Israel. He could kill you just because you weren't paying attention or something like that. He had the mightiest warriors. He had the mightiest soldiers in all of Israel, but they were cowering. They were shaken like leaves on trees at the sight of the giant Goliath. They weren't looking at God. They weren't thinking about the power that was potentially available to them through God. They were only thinking about what did they have, the might that they had, the weaponry that they had. They needed the help of God. And for some reason, we don't fully understand, David was thinking clearly, more clearly than any of the warriors. David was thinking more clearly than the king. He had his eyes on God. He had his eyes in the right place for the true power. They needed the help of God. And David, as we know, we won't read the whole story, you've read it 100 times. David killed Goliath relatively easily without any of the conventional weaponry, without expertise. He was a young boy. He was the least likely person to dispatch the giant, but he had his eyes on God. King Saul and the mightiest warriors in the land didn't have the power of God in that moment. They needed the power of God. They needed young David, this little boy, to come and take care of business for them. The police need our help. We don't necessarily have bullets and guns and badges and handcuffs and all that stuff, but they really need our help, and we all have help for them. At least we can pray for them. I know that's something that every one of us can do. No matter what your situation is, you can pray for the cops tonight. When you put your head on the pillow, you can continue to pray for the cops tomorrow. They need our prayers. They need our help. We have something. The LAPD. I love many of them dearly. I'm very close to many of them. I've had a wild, wild ride working in cooperation with the PD since I got out of the space program. I'm seeing my wildest dreams come true. But they are not ostensibly a Christian organization. There are individual Christians within the PD. They have chaplains of various sorts and things like that, but they don't all necessarily walk in the power of God. It's not part of the job description. It's not a requirement for you to get that badge and to get through the police academy that you walk in the power of God. They need our help. They need the power of God. We need a miracle. They need a miracle. This country is so stacked against them right now, and dishonestly so, unjustly so. They need our help. And these are individuals. There's flesh and blood behind the badge. They're not nameless, faceless, trigger-happy racists. They're human beings.
No, but then why are they, that's terrible that they're saying black minds matter,
Right.
black people matter.
Right.
Well, all of us matter.
Thank you.
As humans.
Thank you. They're actually saying now that for you to say what you just said is racist. There are people on Facebook saying, oh, if you're saying all lives matter, that must mean you're against black people. They're not. You would think at least that the Black Lives Matter crowd, and yes, I'm talking to you. If you're listening, you're watching this broadcast, I welcome opposing viewpoints. Dialogue with me. Hit me up on Facebook or whatever if you want. Go to the website. The phone number's on their call. The Black Lives Matter crowd, some of them are saying, yes, of course all lives matter. They're at least smart enough to say, well, we're not supposed to be racist like we're accusing everybody else. It sounds racist if we don't agree that all lives matter. So then they say, yes, of course all lives matter. But there are some on Facebook, I don't know if they're actually part of Black Lives Matter or if they're like independents, that's a specific organization, that are saying, if you say all lives matter, that means you're a racist against black people.
I'm not.
Could you believe? Oh, of course not, right? Could you believe it?
Because
They're actually arguing that
they're black,
yeah, of course,
brown, and
but they're actually arguing that we should not say all lives matter. They're saying it's racist against black people to say all lives matter. It's astonishing to me, but again, opinions and facts. Everybody has an, right? Yeah, everybody has an opinion, right? Some opinions don't compare very favorably with the facts. That's amazing. Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8 and verse 5. Matthew 8:5. Matthew 8:5 says, Jesus entered Capernaum. When Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, imploring him and saying, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, fearfully tormented. Now the centurion had a big sword. He could chop off your head with impunity, no questions asked. If you just disrespected him or weren't paying attention or didn't get out of his way when he came swaggering by or whatever, centurion pretty much had the authority to run you through with a sword, cut off your head, do whatever he wanted to. He had a big shield. Nothing was getting through that shield. The centurion was pretty much, there was no way a guy like me would have a chance against him, and he could slice me to ribbons, no questions asked. He had, you would think, all the power in the world. But neither his sword nor his shield could save his suffering servant that was sick. He didn't have enough power to heal, to save his servant. Swords and shields, they don't heal. So the centurion came to Jesus. He needed the power of God. And he said, Lord, he said, where are we here? Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, fearfully tormented. Jesus said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion said, Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof. The centurion recognized the power that Jesus had that he did not have. I'm not worthy for you to come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my slave, do this, and he does it. Now when Jesus heard this, he marveled, and said to those who were following, truly I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel. I say east, west. Okay, good. No, that's far enough for the point I'm trying to make. Neither sword nor shield could heal. The police need our help. The neighborhood, the community needs healing. The confused people who have the best of intentions that have been misled to believe that cops are all racist, and that cops are all trigger happy, and it's a mafia. They need to be educated. They need to get straight. The idiots that think they know how to drive before they've actually hit the track with us and been badly embarrassed, generally speaking, and think they would catch that bill, even though in 35 years, nobody has ever caught the bill. Literally one person caught it one time, but he got lucky. I give everybody 3 strikes. Nobody catches it. I've been doing that 35 years. The people who think they'd catch that bill, they have no idea what it's like in the shoes of the police. They need to be educated. They need to go and have a simulator where the Community Police Academy, they put you through the simulator, and they put a gun in your hand, and the thing registers where you shoot and where the bullet hit and stuff like that. And they run these scenarios by you where people come running out of a house and you can't tell who's a good guy and a bad guy, and you have the blink of an eye to decide who to shoot. And I watched a pastor stand there kind of paralyzed in one of these scenes when we were going through Community Police Academy, and he was in a hospital and going to investigate some disturbance. And a woman came running out in the hall saying, he's killing me, or something. And a man had a stick or a bat or something and was battering her, but he wasn't armed with a gun. And the pastor hesitated because he knows how it looks on the evening news. Every time a cop shoots an unarmed person and the woman perished, the man crushed the woman's skull because the pastor wouldn't shoot. And he wasn't close enough to use what's it called, taser or any of that. All this happens in the blink of an eye.
Oh, no.
Those people who have good intentions and think they would catch the bill, and they don't have a clue what they would do in the blink of an eye in life and death situations, they could be educated. They're not necessarily bad. They need education. They should go through one of these simulators and see what they would do in a blink of an eye when they're challenged. Yeah.
Right.
The cops need our help. The community needs healing. I would encourage every one of us can at least pray for the cops. And maybe you can do more than pray for the cops. Maybe you can say, we appreciate what you're doing. You can actually go to the station and buy them a cup of coffee or something like that. Maybe you can engage in discourse on Facebook or at the coffee shop or the library or the shopping mall, wherever you might be. When you hear somebody talking some inaccurate criticism, you could at least politely and peacefully state the facts. The universe is made up of facts and opinions, And if somebody wants to say, oh, cops are all trigger-happy racists, we're mad about all this unjust killing, the fact is there are greater than 1,000 killings from gangs, drugs, and drunk driving for every one questionable killing by cop. That is a fact. The person might not like the fact. They might hate you for stating the facts. It happens sometime. But you can at least state facts.
I do. When I see a police officer or a fireman, I go up to them, maybe in the grocery store where I'm buying stuff, and I'll thank them. I'll tell them that you risk your lives for us, and I thank you so much. I do that for a police officer or a fireman.
Good.
So that's a good idea, for everyone to think about doing that.
Good. Thank you. Jerry, would you close us in prayer?
Sure.
For specifically for the cops and for anything else you want to. Huh? Here or on camera, whatever you prefer.
Oh, I'll just pray from here.
Okay, great.
Thank you for bringing us together tonight, Lord. Thank you for the freedom that we have to gather and to worship you and to read from your word. I pray a special prayer for all of those men and women in law enforcement that have a crowd of people looking at them in a negative light that's not justified by a lot of data that's maybe brought on by maybe a bad personal experience or just popular rhetoric that's spread amongst the masses, and I pray that these police officers would not be disheartened by this, and that they would continue in patience, and they would all come to know that you are God. And I pray for the people that are confused and the people that are deceived, that they would come to know that not every cop is a criminal, that these are men and women with families and hopes and dreams just like anybody else, and they at least deserve that much respect and even much more than that they sign themselves up to put their lives at risk every day to protect people like us that spit in their face and call them names and don't even respect what they do, and they've taken that on that thankless job just to provide us with safety. And I pray that you would move through this situation, that your spirit would move and bring truth where there is darkness. And I pray all this in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you for joining us. We love you. As you know, at Motor Gospel Ministries, we never ask for donations for our racing team or for our charitable activities in the community. If this is the place where you want to give your tithes and offerings, you can find a PayPal button on the chapel tab on motorgospel.org, or here in the chapel we have our purple box over there for tithes and offerings. Thank you for joining us. We love you. We'll be racing at Willow Springs next week, so no broadcast next week, but we will see you in 2 weeks. God bless you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Wait, I'll shut off the